That smells really good.
Have any food at the house?
You have M&Ms or pretzels?
No, I mean at the house. So I don't have any food. I'll have steamed fresh vegetables. I think I got those.
Okay.
I got 6 on the phone, but you're not lit up. There you go.
We're on.
Oh, we're on, huh?
Scottish? Are you Scottish? You have plaid?
Good to go? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 meeting of the City of St. Augustine Beach Planning and Zoning Board. We're going to call the meeting to order right now, and our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You need to go here. School.
We could do our roll call. Here.
Ms. Odom?
Here.
Mr. Einhauser? Here. Ms. Longstreet? Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Saris?
Here.
Mr. Kranis? Mr. Tisdale?
Here.
Mr. Babbitt?
Okay, thank you. Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes for the Planning and Zoning meeting from October 13th. Everybody gotten a chance to go through the minutes? Anybody have any comments, adjustments, additions, deletions to the minutes? We have a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
We have a second? Second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries and the minutes are good. Okay, now's the time for public comment. Do we have any public comment for anything that is not on our agenda tonight? Yes, ma'am. If you could state your name and address, and when you get done, if you wouldn't mind filling out a comment card, and
They're back
Okay.
here.
Okay, my name is Karen Leslie, 13A 6th Street. And when they did the McMansion by Coneheads, it flooded. And then they put a drainage system in along the alleyway because they filled in OBs behind. That's where they dug the dirt out to make the road, and that's where the water went, and then they filled it in, and it splattered it. They have 3 on the end of 6th Street and Atlantic Alley and 1 in front of my house, so there's 4. But I think that the whole alley is higher on one side and goes lower in mine because it just holds water, has nowhere to go. It comes down from the beach down, and it fills. There was a really bad a small pothole, and they couldn't fill it. It got bigger. And people from the hotel walk down, it's raining, it floods right over those grates. And they're walking through the puddle, and then there's a 6-inch dip. The guys carry, it's raining. You see the raindrops in the big puddle at the end of the road. And the guy's wife's walking, he's carrying the chairs and the umbrellas, marching to the hotel. And he steps in that hole. I call, he's hurt. Then a little girl, rain, it's a small puddle, it's clear. She's like short, she's riding her bike. And she comes along and she goes down, she falls off her bike. Now, we just had a bicycle for 2 come around. You've got tourists at the hotels, vacation, they don't know the road. So the kids are riding and she's coming, she's from Orlando, they're from Georgia. And she ran over the back of the bicycle, it went in the front wheel, it took out her tire, it took out the wheel rim. I had to bring it onto mine, I'm giving them first aid, they don't know what to do, the kid's upset, the parents come from Georgia, I got 8 parents there, and these 2 ladies, and everybody's freaking out, and the police come, and I said, this has been a disaster. Now, they did patch it, but this whole drainage, and this is, all the construction, they go where they want. The police are finally doing something. When OBs came in, everybody was parking all over. The neighbors came in here and complained. We had no place to go. You couldn't even walk. They're parking on both sides, and then we got no parking on one side. So it is, that road, because of the hotel, you've got the two ones that go to the beach, but you have a ton of tourists that come out, get breakfast, come out that hotel, walk back and forth with little kids walking ahead of their parents. And then you got people driving around, and so we've said that this is a dangerous area when Obies came in, and that was years ago. And so you really, 1,000% have to help the safety of the tourist, the hotel guest, pedestrians, little kids in rentals, riding bicycles, people walking dogs. There's people loving the beach, and that's fine, but this whole road, and it's not paved, it's bumpy, and the kids are, it really needs an overhaul and a lot of consideration, because it floods from Obi's parking lot down, up the alleyway, up into front of the new house on 6th, right across from this lot. Like, we've got pictures of this. There's no, you can't, water's, if I took a glass of water and I poured it on this, it's gonna go flat. It's not gonna just magically go out to the road and it's no problem 30 feet away from here, as I've been told. It finds its own level, and that's the yellow house. I'll stop right there. But this, thank you for fixing the thing, because this lady's having a terrible time in court, and she's not even driving her car to work. She's walking or riding her bike. She feels so bad hitting this bicycle bit, and it was crunched. And I'm so glad that it wasn't blood. He just had road rash all over him. And all this could have been avoided if you just filled the potholes. Thank you.
What exactly is the address that you're talking about, ma'am? Behind Obi's?
The whole area, Atlantic Alley and 6th Street.
The pothole has been filled now?
Yes. And the police sent an email to the building people and maintenance, and they put 2 cones, and those cones stayed there. Because it's still, people are riding around and coming, they go to Obi's, they're looking around, they're doing cone heads and coming around. They're circling around. They're looking at rentals and checking out property. It is active. It is very active.
Some of that private property,
What? Which one?
the area you're talking about? Or is it just the alley?
I'm talking about the road, and I don't own, nobody owns the road.
Public Works aware of this complaint?
Yes, sir, Public Works is very aware. My staff did speak with the resident today, and Public Works is the appropriate mechanism. This board and my department deals mostly in private property.
Yeah.
Next year, the city is going to try to develop a paving plan, and that's going to be something that Bill Tredick and his department will put together. And we are scheduled, I believe, to have a joint meeting with this board and that board. Nothing's been finalized yet, but that's the intent of the commission for next year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your comments.
Is there 2 problems, a pothole problem and a flooding problem? Right?
Yes.
And what's causing the flooding problem again?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Whenever they do the road, they'll have to get to the flooding, because it doesn't, it's bad.
Okay, any other public comment for items not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment and go to new business. Our first order of new business is skipped, right?
It's a variance application, variance file number,
You got to talk about the vacating the alley first.
yes, I'm sorry, a vacating alley application, 2020-01. And on behalf of the applicant, staff is asking that this application be continued to the board's December 15th meeting and the city commission's January 4th, 2021 meeting.
Okay, without objection, we just move it to the December meeting?
Yeah, just it takes a vote. It can be a consensus vote, so as long as no one objects.
Any objection to moving this to the December meeting, the vacating of the alley? Okay, without objection, we've done it. Done.
Okay.
Thank you.
That takes us right to variance file number VAR 2020-12, 7 4th Street. This is an application for a west side yard setback reduction from 10 feet to 5 feet. The applicants are the property owners, Paul and Cheryl Marziani, and they wish to build a second-story deck with a roof over it and a staircase. The dimensions of the deck are on the overhead screens. It's approximately 10 feet by 18 and a half feet, 185 square feet. It extends 10 feet into the current 18 and a half foot side setback. So the deck itself has an 8 and a half foot west side setback. And then the exterior staircase accessing the new deck extends out another 3.5 feet. So that will leave a west side yard setback of 5 feet.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Bonnie? No, thank you.
Ask the applicants to come to the podium.
Yes. If we could hear from the applicants?
Yeah.
If you could give us your name and address and,
Paul Marziani, 7 4th Street. Our contractor couldn't be here today. At the last minute, he had an emergency. So, but he did, I know you have a package that was distributed to you. He couldn't be here, so he sent me some drawings, last minute drawings, that I'd like to, he wanted to share with the board.
Just so you know, sir, anything we put up there becomes our record. It's all set up, you go on your overheads. They can't take it right now individually, but you can put it on the overhead, and I will hand out, if we don't have enough. So you can just flip the page and turn around there and there. And
I
if
see.
there's something you want to
Okay.
specifically do, we should have a laser pointer. All right, yeah.
All right, so before I go on, did you have an opportunity to go through the package, to review the package? Or if you have any questions? In the package we distributed to you, there's a statement. I wanted to point out that we bought this property in 2004. We've been there for 16 years. We attempted at one point to try to do something in the way of a remodel, and we had then applied for a variance, and we had to back off because we're on the seaward side of a CCNL. We couldn't afford what was required in terms of construction, so we delayed that and postponed it for another date. So the property had become a rental property, a vacation rental, and our plan had always been to someday move back in and make it our permanent home, and that's what we're doing here. So we're making some changes and doing what we can afford to do to make the home comfortable and more functional. One of the hardships that we have primarily is that our entrance into the home is on the east side, so we get beat up by nor'easters, by the storms off the ocean, and we really wanted to change that. And so this design has our main entrance on the west side and coming up on the side deck there. What you're seeing in the overhead here, and this would help to address some of the concerns that my neighbor had regarding, water that may come down, the roof there is where we would have a gutter system to ensure that water doesn't flow in towards his yard and cause any problems there. It would divert to the sides, and there would be a downspout, and then some sort of, I don't know if it's a French drain, or what he has indicated here, but also I wanted to point out that there's no change to the lot coverage in terms of pervious versus impervious. It's going to be river rock as it is today, so there isn't going to be any issue regarding that. What questions can I answer for anybody?
Mr. Law?
Yes, sir, thank you. You just stated that there's not going to be any change in impervious. Is this essentially, we could call it carport, if you will? You're going to park a car, right? Is that part of your application? To get unload groceries and such?
Well,
I guess my question before we get to that is this not designed to shed water? It's a roof that's not supposed to let the water filter through, right? I just want to clear it up for the board.
Yeah, if it's a deck, the water will just come right through it, and then I don't think that changes. But if it's going to be a roof, it adds to the surface,
Yes.
roof surface.
Yes, sir. The concept of lot coverage and impervious has been a fun one since the beginning of time. So if it does have a roof, it counts as lot coverage. The definition of impervious surface ratio, it starts off with any building. So it wouldn't necessarily increase your lot coverage and your impervious surface, but that's not what we're here for today, because that would have to just comply with the code like normal.
okay.
So I just, for the board, because it is a confusing topic.
All right, so it's a technical,
Yes, sir, it does increase lot coverage and impervious surface ratio.
okay, thanks.
You're welcome, sir.
But it makes a difference for drainage too, I think. If the water's just going to come straight through your deck and come straight down to the ground, it doesn't look like you're adding to your roof surface on your house, right? Just the deck?
Well, he has, I'm not sure if I'm addressing your question, but he's going to have a gutter system to divert the water.
But you're not making the roof itself of the house bigger.
Oh, no, we're extending the existing roof, and then off of that, covering the new deck, is
It's a
going to be a new roof area
So there will be a new roof.
over the deck.
He's adding roof square footage.
Oh, okay.
Second floor porch.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just to clarify the definition between a deck and a porch, a deck is a horizontal paved or unpaved surface without a roof. That's the
Yeah, I
that's
didn't
the
see the roof
delineation.
on here.
Even though we all consider it decks when it's open to the environment on the side, it's technically a porch, which defines it as lot coverage, which we just discussed.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I have nothing to add to that subject, actually.
So Mr. Law did ask you, are you going to park underneath this porch?
There will be opportunity, if it's raining, and if, we're able to fit a car in,
Okay.
we're going to duck underneath of the deck.
No problem, I just wanted to clarify.
If there's a roof over it, I mean, it's not a deck.
No, sir, it's a porch at that point. It's basically an extenuation of the existing building.
Yeah.
And once again, just for the record, a deck is a horizontal paved or unpaved surface without a roof.
Okay, so this is a porch. This is a porch.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's one of these confusing terms that we shift between.
Okay.
Everybody calls it a deck, but it's technically a porch because it appears to have a roof over it.
Okay, I got it. It's a porch.
Are you going to remove the stairs on the east side?
No, I think we're going to leave it there. As, it allows us still to walk, because it's a wraparound to the back.
Okay.
It allows us to walk to the back, but we're going to close off that door. That's more for the inside, interior, not to have that door there. My wife wants a wall there so she can hang pictures.
I know, I used to live in that house. I lived in that house in the 60s.
Excuse me?
In
You
the
lived in that
60s, I
house?
lived in that house, yeah.
You lived in their house?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
In the 60s, yeah.
This is a small town.
Very small. And it was, I know
Oh, my
how
gosh.
little it is, so I know. I mean, we had 3 bedrooms, but it was tight.
Wow,
We used the porch on 4th Street as a bedroom,
that's interesting.
with 6 of us in there, so it was,
That's interesting.
but I'm
Wow.
glad you're trying to do something. It looks lovely.
Yeah, this is going to be home. We've moved around, and finally, after all this time, this has come back, and we're staying put.
Great little house.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the applicant?
I do. You didn't notice. It would be the north side? East side, excuse me. The one that wraps around? How close to the property line is that one?
It's already done.
I'm looking at the survey, what appears to be a survey, and it looks like it's at best a couple feet from the property line.
On the east side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's close on the east side. That's been there since 1942. That home was there in 1942. Then my neighbor built something there, I don't know.
Any other questions?
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to point out
I'm sorry, if you tell us who you are.
I'm
and where you
sorry, I'm Cheryl Marziani, 7 4th Street, and we'd love for you to stop by once the remodel's done and see the house.
Love to, thank you.
I just wanted to point out the variance that was granted 2 doors down, the same exact variance, like 6 months ago. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody saw
You
that.
probably have a picture.
We
of
have
that.
pictures of that variance that was granted to Bert Taverty. So
Yeah,
Okay.
couple doors down.
I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that.
Tom, anything? My neighbor Tom wants to say something.
Well, he has to,
Hello.
Yeah, nobody had any other questions,
Any other
so.
questions? Want me to wait?
Fix the other.
Nobody has any more questions from the applicant? Okay, we'll take questions from the public, please.
Okay.
Or comments. If you could fill out a comment card when you get done and give it to them, please.
Okay. My name is Tom McGrath, and I own the home at 9 4th Street, neighbors with Paul and Cheryl. I've been there since 94, so that's 26 years, and I'm proud to say that I'm the most senior resident on our little stretch of Paradise east of Beach Boulevard. I'm here because Paul and Cheryl are seeking a variance of a setback variance of 5 feet. And I would like to say first that they are planning to move in full-time, okay? So that's a welcome addition compared to renters. For many, many years, my wife and I were the only permanent residents on 4th Street. Every home was a permanent or resident, or a permanent or short-term rental. Real neighbors are something my wife and I prefer. Less noise, trash, and cars, a better sense of community, and neighbors looking out for each other is something that is just better than renters on every level, okay? I've been in front of this commission 4 or 5 times over the course of 26 years for similar variance requests, and most all variances have been fully approved or approved with some adjustments. So I feel it would be unfair to Paul and Cheryl to be rejected when you consider the variance approvals of the past. Look around St. Augustine Beach and what do you see? Remodels being done, everybody maximizing their setbacks and building up, okay? I get it. That doesn't mean I like it. Loss of ocean views, loss of privacy. It's tight and it's getting tighter, okay? If you don't get along with your neighbors, which we do, it would really suck, okay? So the one problem I've noticed after many years is drainage of stormwaters, okay? My property simply does not drain as well as it did years ago, and it's a concern because I'm still old school and I'm still on septic with gray and septic tanks. So it's always a concern with me. I keep them intact and up and running, but it's a concern, okay? Bigger, larger roofs, 5-foot setbacks means there's less space, obviously, for the water to drain. So I've spoken to Paul about it, and he's agreed to put up some kind of a gutter. I'm really not sure what's going on with our deck, if it's going to be covered or not, if it's going to drain. I thought there was going to be a roof on the deck. I don't really know. But anyway, so he's agreed that, you know, if the water's going to drain, he's going to put up some spouts, and that way, and then put the drains north or south, but not west toward my property where the setbacks are going to be so tight, because it's already swampy over there. It's swampy on the other side where the other variance was just approved for my other neighbors. So, you know, they're a welcome permanent addition, and I really feel like they deserve this variance, okay? And also, I want everybody to remember this pretty face, because my wife and I are going to be doing a remodel in the future, and I've come up here for all these variances, and everybody's gotten approved. So, you know, remember this face, because I expect some leeway in the future when ours goes down, okay?
well, tell Brenda to come up instead of you.
I know. There you go. Hey, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions for the speaker? Okay. Do we have any other comments? We have board comments.
I have a question. Right, Brian, the CCL, is this porch, covered porch affected? Is the CCL requirements come into play here?
Yes, sir, the building is seaward of the CCCL, as I understand it from my staff, and as such, 3109 of the Florida Building Code takes precedence. For them even to apply for a DEP permit to construct anything requires a letter from the local jurisdiction zoning department saying it's not going to oppose anything. So that letter could not be granted because my staff does not have the mechanism to violate the side setbacks, which is why this variance is taking place. So the board, if it decides to approve this, then at that point, we would issue a letter in the next couple of days so they can begin the process of applying for DEP. If they tried to apply right now, it would just be, they'd take the money and just reject it and say, missing information, please resubmit. But there is no guarantee DEP will or will not issue the permit. That's outside of our purview.
Answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome.
And sir, you have the property closest to the where the variance is being requested. You're the neighbor right there.
On the west side.
Okay.
I want to reiterate that our contract is going to address the gutter issue.
I'm good.
Okay, any other board comment? None. I would like to just make a comment that one of the things, I know there's been some reference here that all the variances that come here have been granted, and I'm not sure what the percentage is and how they are, but all the variances that come here are subject to the same rules under the city's rules for variances, and they ask for a hardship. And one of the things that we're tasked with doing is evaluating and looking at hardships. And the hardship that I think got mentioned in here was that carrying groceries in the rain is a hardship, and I'm not sure that meets the intent, and we'd like to help you, I think, with this, but with that kind of hardship, the city has rules for variances for the reasons that they have the variances. They're here to provide some structure and uniformity and many other things. So for us to evaluate a request and go outside of the rules, we're looking for a hardship and a way to help somebody use their property more effectively or efficiently, or to help somebody out of a position where they're unable to use their property effectively or efficiently. So I'm asking you, I guess, if you could maybe clarify a little bit the hardship that's requiring this variance.
Oh, yeah, it's not just that. This home is, 1,100 square feet of living space. Because we can't expand our walls, we can't expand our living space because we can't afford to do that, or go up. What we're trying to do is expand our living space, at least, albeit outside, is along that deck, the deck on the west side, at least to be able to be outside on the porch, the covered porch. So while we're outside, we're not in the rain. But again, this is outdoor living space. So what we're trying to do is something affordable. The rain, coming in, that's one aspect of it. But the other part of it is exactly that. It's a small space. It's a small home. It's a box. And we're just expanding our porch on the west side somewhat, so we can at least enjoy the outside there. So
Okay.
that's.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have one.
Yes.
I'm talking a lot tonight. This is my first night up here. I guess maybe I feel like I should talk. So Paul, you're gonna have to still meet this CCL, structural requirements, right? Because I know you've noted that in here that that's costly, but it's still apparent that you're gonna have to meet some coastal construction structural requirements.
It's understood, yeah, and my contractor is aware of it.
Okay.
And he's totally aware of it, and some of the requirements and paperwork, things that have to be submitted to the state.
What is the restriction on your expanding the house?
Well,
Money?
cost and money, really, what we're able to do.
But it's not because of its location.
Well, yeah, it does, because in order to do that, for example, Bert Tavery's home, a couple doors down, he didn't have the same requirements so far as footers, footings, pilings. I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure what the engineering.
Okay, it's because you're seaward of the.
Yeah, it's very expensive to put those pilings in. We did look at a couple designs. I would love to expand the walls, but we can't afford to do that.
I have something to say.
Sir, you're going to need to go to one of the microphones so it can be on the record.
So you guys probably already know this, and I'm sure Paul and Cheryl.
Please don't start until you get up to the microphone. Thank you.
Whatever that coastal line is, Bert, that is the property line between my neighbor on the west. So that line, that coastal whatever demarcation line is that goes through, is our property line between Bert, Tavery, and our property. So I always say Bert's on the good side of the line, and we're on the screwed side of the line. Because I've already looked into it, and it's ridiculously expensive for everything that has to be done. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So he's on the other side of the line. I know you guys probably already know that, but it's a huge expense if you're on the screwed side of the line like Paul and Cheryl and I, my wife are. So just letting you know, so.
No, I saw it down on D Street. They took a house and put it on, an old house and put it on pilings.
No.
I don't.
What's that?
Any other comments, any questions for the applicant or the, yes, ma'am, will you come up to the mic, please?
Well, I just want to reiterate, when you're talking about hardships, it's because of the CCL that we can't afford. I mean, we've been told how much one piling would cost if we expanded the existing floor plan, if we didn't stay within, if we wanted to go beyond the footprint of the house. So that is definitely a hardship because of the cost, because of being on the CCL line. So I just want to point that out.
Okay.
Add that to our hardships.
Okay. Noted, thank you.
When they put this porch on with a roof, what will that kick in with DEP?
So for the board, seaward of the coastal construction control line, regardless of whether or not you're in a special flood hazard area or not, is still subjected to 3109 of the building code. The first chapter of that section talks about substantial improvements in buildings. Substantial improvement is defined as 50% of the building value alone. The majority of governments will use the tax roll as their first option because it's performed for us. This house is currently valued, building alone, at $85,252. So they're allowed to spend $42,626, as this building, a proposed addition, is a lateral addition and structurally attached to the building. To exceed that, contract would bring the building into full compliance. That would mean retrofitting the existing facility with most likely helical piles. Every so many feet, engineers would have to be involved in addition to the engineers for the current project.
I understood it.
Basically, if you spend more than half the money that building alone's worth, not the property, not any detached structures, no pools, just the building itself, you have to bring it into full compliance with 3109 of the building code. And that means most likely it would have to be elevated. The reference monument around that area is about 17.4 feet NGVD. I don't know what the first floor is, but it does become very expensive to elevate a house to bring it into compliance, which is why you see garages on most first floors seaward of the coastal construction control line. And their breakaway walls, all that would have become into play under the FEMA 758 manual and 3109 of the building code.
So in this case, being eastward of the coastal construction line and having a house built prior to any of the regulations is certainly a hardship.
Cost prohibitive.
Cost prohibitive is not a hardship.
No.
Not in accordance with city
Leaving the
law.
cost out for a minute, but having a house that's built east of the coastal construction line and prior to any of the rules for them to do what they wanted to do with the house, regardless of the cost, would require significantly more.
I would disagree that a structure that lies seaward of the CCCL gets a hardship for that, because the intent of the Florida Building Code and that section and FEMA's ongoing mission is to bring buildings into compliance. It's not to continue a non-conforming structure that could be subjected to high wave action. As personally, just my opinion, it's up to the board to make the decision, though.
Let me ask this question again. Because it is an new attached structure, it has a roof on it, and it is east of the CCL, that new structure will have to come in compliance with the DEP. It will have to have pilings to support the new structure, yes or no?
If it triggers substantial improvement protocols, then yes.
If it triggers substantial improvement
not-
protocols, it will, but if it doesn't, they can put that foundation for that new structure just on a regularly engineered type of.
They could potentially do that, and because there is a roof tied to the main structure, a breakaway deck component, that is another avenue we normally use in this case, can't be utilized.
Okay, so
Because it would
what,
rip the main structure apart with it. And also keep in mind, there is a permit already active on this for an interior renovation. That will be included with this permit,
yeah,
because it was submitted once.
towards that amount of substantial improvement.
$42,626.
So he's got $42,600 right now, but he's going to have this one permit already applied to that cost, so that number will go down.
It'll keep dwindling away, and once it hits zero, then the building's obligated under state law to come into compliance. And my department reserves the right to see an executed contract if we feel that the addition is being undervalued. This is the ongoing mission of the DEP.
We don't understand what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, you know,
Can you like layman term this for us? We have no idea what you're talking about.
If you exceed half the value of your building, you're required by law to bring it into compliance with CWIR of the Coastal Construction Control Line requirements of 3109 of the Florida Building Code.
If the construction of the porch, that part of the cost, is that what you're referring to?
No, sir. Well, that, and you have a current addition, a current open permit right now that was submitted as one permit, but was broken apart to facilitate the interior construction. That interior renovation did not trigger substantial improvement protocols.
It's cumulative for the, for a year?
Hey, Paul, what they're going to do is they're going to look at the St. Johns County appraised taxed value of your home, not your lot, but your home. They're going to take that number and divide it in half. That number, Brian, step in if I'm wrong.
You're right now. You're doing good.
So they're going to take that number and divide it in half, okay? That is the amount of money you have to make improvements on your home, which we, if you spend over that, then you now have to meet the new requirements for being in that zone, which means pilings, which means DEP, all those structural things. So what you should take away from this conversation is you have about $42,000 and some change to spend on your improvements, and if you exceed that, you are going to have to meet the new compliance, which is DEP, the pilings, and all those other things.
All right. And it includes the improvements that you've already made on the inside.
So that's deducted. What you permitted now is deducted from the 42 that you have.
So, I mean, that just means we have to meet those requirements.
Yes.
The contractor will take care of that.
That'd be good. That would be more in Brian's.
All right, let me try this again.
This is still going to go in front of the DEP either way.
No doubt about it, this will appear in front of the DEP. The reason why this code's in place is because we're going to do a lateral addition. We're going to tie the roof into the main structure. We're going to tie your ledger boards into the main structures so they stay up. Well, in the event of a catastrophic event where we see 3-foot wave heights or something that's going to put hydrodynamic and hydrostatic loading on your building, it could rip that porch right back off it if it's not on a deep pile foundation. Because we structurally attached this addition porch roof to the house, it could put weight on the building. It could drag the building with it. So right now, because of the age of construction, CCCL in St. Johns County didn't appear until about 1988. If you trigger substantial improvement, you will be subjected to 3109 of the Building Code. There is no way around it. You can ask for an appeal to the Florida Building Commission at the state, but the code is very clear on this. And once again, this is the ongoing mission of the Florida Commission and the DEP regarding structure seaward of the coastal line.
Right, Brian, but I hear you, I hear you saying a lot of things there, but are you saying it can't be done, or it can be done, but it's going to have additional hurdles?
Anything can be done. After Hurricane Matthew and Irma, we elevated several houses south of here. That was done by jacking the houses up, installing piles or whatever needed to happen, bringing the buildings into compliance with the special flood hazard area at that time. Anything can be done. It's just, is it cost prohibitive or not? If you trigger substantial improvement, the entire building has to come into compliance as far as 3109 goes. That means your existing structure, I'm not sure what's on the first floor, but no habitable spaces will be granted on the first floor. The walls will have to become breakaway. You'll have to have helical piles because you won't be able to get the rigs in there to drill and fill. And there's a lot of information I'm throwing out, and trust me, you're not expected to understand it all. This is what I do for a living. The question is the variance, and do they define the
If we
hardship?
could bring this back, we're really, tonight, we're tasked with finding whether or not we want to allow you to exceed the 10-foot setback and go to 5 feet setback. So that's what's actually before the board tonight. The rest of it is you deal with the building department, with DEP, with your contractor, with whatever. Okay, do we have any other comments or
I
questions?
sort of have trouble with the non-compliant on the east side, and we're going to grant something else on the other side. I mean, we're a couple of feet from the property line with the existing. And they didn't build it regardless.
Absolutely.
But now we're going to, would we have given a variance for that one?
I would
Probably
imagine
not.
we'd look at it the same way with what's the hardship and what's the, what are the reasons
Yeah.
behind it and what's the history, what's the precedent that's been set.
There.
But, I mean, you can consider that, I guess, but that we don't have to rule on tonight. Any other comments? Any questions? Anybody have a motion? Yeah, we do have to make a motion on this one way or the other.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Well, before I make a motion, I just think that we need to take into consideration all the comments and stuff that we've had this evening. And I know this house, and I know living in that house it's small. And so I think the outside living space, I know it's not a hardship, but I still think the outdoor living space is going to make this more desirable for a permanent resident. Rentals, I probably wouldn't have the same feeling that I do now. So that's just my comment on it, but I will make the motion. I'll make the motion to approve the setbacks from 10 to 5 on the west side of the property. Is that good enough?
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? I would like to note that the only comments that we've heard here tonight are from the neighbor most affected by the reduced setback, and they've been in support of the application. I'm still not sure we've met the hardship requirement. Mr. Law.
If you recall, several months ago, we struggled with another variance, and we went through the 7 items out of the code for hardship, and we discussed each one individually, and that seemed to help the board make their final decision, if it's something you'd be interested in.
Could you do that again?
I can. Last time, I believe I went to the podium and used the
If you
overhead.
don't mind putting those up, and we'll go through those individually again. I think it's not only good for us, but it's good for everybody out there to understand that each variance is subjected to the same 7 criteria.
All right. And I believe last time, Ms. Berta didn't ask me to read it.
I didn't.
Okay, and I mean, I don't think, for number 1, we're not going to read each one, right? But for number 1, my impression, I don't think that there is an inability to make economic use, appropriate or reasonable economic use of the property. I mean, it's obviously been in use since 1942, so. Any other comments on number 1?
I agree with you.
Next.
Number 2? Any comments on number 2?
I guess that's the question that I have. Is it a precedental effect of the variance, is that sort of in line with what we have done in the past? As far as, are we setting a new precedent, or are we?
Well, every variance, I believe, unless I'm wrong, we ask the attorney, every variance is precedental.
It's precedental.
Yeah, it has the ability to create precedent. Every situation is its own unique situation, but as it gets closer and closer to other situations, you should definitely take that into account, and you should try to be as consistent as possible. Use the same rationales.
So in granting this variance, there is some consistency that we've already established in other areas, I guess?
Right down the street.
Right down the street. We've done the same, okay,
Yeah, the
Yeah,
one
you've
at
got it in your
11
packet.
4th Street.
He has
Okay.
it in his packet.
okay. Okay. Just asking.
But on the other hand, setting granting a variance without a hardship, what we try to do here on the board, at least what I've tried to do since I've been here, is to create each variance, at least in my own mind, as a unique animal. So we can look back at each variance and say, okay, that's the reason that one got approved. That's the reason this one got approved. And so they don't all become, you come up here and ask for a variance and you get a variance, and the procedure really is just coming before this board. Because
Not rubber
that's
stamp.
not what it's for. That's not really what the process is for. Any other comment? Berta, did you want to
No,
say something about this one?
no, I mean, what he just gave Victor was, that's a precedent we set 6 months ago.
Right.
Or the
Okay.
almost exact, not the
Do you
exact
remember
same
what the
thing.
hardship was on that one?
Bonnie, you remember?
I do recall that the board instructed the applicant to remove the concrete driveway and put in 10% or greater permeable pavers, but I don't remember it being exactly like this one. I don't,
It's not exactly like that, but we
Yeah.
did set a precedence to reduce the setback.
Bert Tavries at 11 4th Street had an existing 5-foot side setback. So they just wanted to build within the current existing setback. Again, the house was built before the current codes went into effect.
So he didn't increase he didn't increase
Reduce the
he didn't
setback.
reduce the setback further. He built within what was already a setback
Right.
on another portion of the building.
definition of
He wanted
non-conforming
to
comes in.
do some
Yes,
interior work.
but still, he was
We let him fill in the,
Yeah, 'cause he was
Fill in the
expanding
space.
an existing non-conforming structure. So that's why he had to apply for the variance.
I remember now,
Okay.
thank you.
okay, number 3.
I think,
We'll give you a chance to come back up before we do anything. Okay, and I think 3 kind of speaks for itself.
3 speaks for itself. Every variance you grant creates a precedent that you should apply the same logic to the next similarly situated situation.
But 3 also says the city would like you never to grant a variance, is how I read that. Yeah,
It's that
so
you
I'm
should
not
think
sure.
strongly about it.
Okay. All right. Maybe a lawyer
So
wrote that.
some of the logic here is that the lot is only 48.3 feet wide, a non-conforming lot, and that, to want to make an improvement like this, it's foreseeable. It's something that other lots that have a wider, width in their setbacks. So I can kind of understand that because of the width of the lot and the need to make the improvement, you're going to have a side setback consideration for variance. I know I'm stating the obvious here, but this is the kind of precedent that could keep reoccurring with the non-conforming lot widths in the city of St. Augustine Beach. So we've probably had this before. Evidently, Bert Tavries was the same type of narrow lot too, or?
But he'd already been,
But he had already built to the 5-foot setback.
his was already there. He just wouldn't build within it.
Okay, so kind of what I'm establishing is that if you have a non-conforming lot, especially when it comes to width, and establishing a precedent there that, hey, the city of St. Augustine Beach is open for that conversation if you want to encroach into the side setback. that could we say that's kind of an opportunity to set a precedent that we are willing to talk about, for lack of a better way?
I think it's a dangerous precedent
Okay.
to say that because you have a smaller lot, we're going to allow you to ignore the variances, or ignore the setbacks, and only because we don't set the setbacks. The commission has set the setbacks and
Okay.
but they've set the setbacks, and those are the rules for the governing, building in the city. And outside of these 7 reasons, to go outside of those rules, we can grant a variance to go outside of those 7 rules, but to create an entire class of precedent by saying that you have a narrow lot, therefore we're willing to listen to this every time, then we might as well send it back to the commission and say, change your setbacks, because there's a lot of non-conforming lots out there, and that doesn't, I don't think the 48-foot lot creates a hardship, because it's the same as it was when it was purchased.
But
That's actually the number 4, and I'm going to have to flip the page to get to it. Now, keep in mind, currently, and this is a survey, which is pretty recent, in a couple months. They still do have currently 18.6 feet. So in theory, and the lawyer can address this, they could expand to 10 foot. Because they're not, even though the building is non-conforming, this variance could potentially swing that way. So they would have options to expand the home if they need living area, and then the building department will handle the CCCL requirements down the road. So, and like I said, my job is not to sway the board, it's to provide technical assistance.
They could bring it out to 8 feet.
They could come out at 8.5 feet. I have no idea what size vehicle they
Brian,
have.
could they add some cantilever to that too, on the second floor?
They cannot cantilever past the BRL. They're allowed to do, we do have a rule, I think 25% of the gross floor area can go 30 inches unsupported. The reason why that rule was created is it stops the equivalent of a mushroom house, where we build the bottom floor complies and we come out 4 feet on each side, then we're right back to a 5-foot setback shedding water. The way the code's written is any portion of a building. Definition of a building is any walled or beams or posts supporting a roof designed for shelter of people, products. So a cantilever will still be subjected to the same restrictions.
Okay, but you said 30 inches, can they do any type of cantilever into that BRL?
Number 4 here is where this was a code change, I believe, in 2018. And it was designed to protect doors on the sides of garages or houses with a roof, because overhangs are limited to 18 inches past the BRL in the city.
Okay, so are we on number 4?
no, that's 4 or something else.
Huh?
4 or something else.
I know, he's going to go back to 4.
So that's 10 and 2.5, that's 12.5 feet then, with the cantilever, 2.5 cantilever?
It
Did I
should be
read
about
that?
30 inches, if I recall.
30 inches, yeah. So
But it's
10
only can be 25% of the wall, so if your house is 10 feet, maybe we're just going to use 10 feet. But you can only have a cantilever 2.5 feet. So the logic was not to allow the cantilever to go continuous all the way out and expand the second or third floors, but it was designed to allow the designers to have architectural profiling on the house, so we didn't come up with a 3-story shoebox.
So that 30 inches cannot go the whole length of the... or
No,
width of
sir,
the
it can
deck.
serve 25% of the wall it serves, and that includes the overhang. So the building code says you're going to have at least, I think it still has in there, you can have a 6-inch overhang. Anything less than that, you'll have to gutter. It becomes problematic in this state to have short overhangs.
Question. If they expanded the 8.5 feet, could they bring the roof out and the deck portion out cantilever?
There are no provisions that I'm aware of to allow a deck to exceed the side BRL.
Okay.
We do have provisions in the front of the and the rear, depending on the setbacks. If they're 25 feet front setback, they can encroach 10 feet in a deck, but keep in mind, a deck has no roof.
Yeah.
And it's same in the rear, but there are no known provisions that I'm aware of in the side yard setbacks for decks.
Okay, any more questions on that? We'll go to the next.
Let me know when you want me to flip the page.
Everybody good?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I don't think the request for the variance is anything that's self-inflicted. Any questions on 4? Let's go to 5. Any questions on 5? We've heard from the neighbor who's in support of this. All right, and 7. We have no indication that this is going to increase flooding or certainly not traffic.
No, if the board sees fit to approve this and DEP sees fit to issue the permit, the drainage, as I understand, from what I hear, they've been working on this with their neighbors, which is great. It'll be under the control of the city engineer.
Okay, any questions or comments regarding the requirements for the variance?
I have a comment, because we
Yes.
did talk about issuing variances similar, and I wasn't here for Mr. Taverdes, but it does say he did reduce from 10 feet to 5 feet.
It says that.
It does say that
On his variance.
on his setback.
I've been there since '94, and the way the houses were built was mother to father, so I bought the son's house, Bert bought the parents' house, and it's always been 5 feet. There's never been 10 feet between, Bert didn't change the bottom level of his house. It's always been 5 feet from our fence line.
We just
Which is
allowed him to build
what
in
I
it.
think we said, he already was 5 feet there, he just was able to build another section out to equal that 5 feet. We didn't let him go any further into the setback.
He didn't go further, he went up.
Up to it.
I remember him going further.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? I have a question, and I'm not sure if we could consider this, but if we were to ask the applicant to move the stairway from the outside to the inside, you could have an interior stairway from that deck going down. That would remove 3.5 feet of the,
Or even put it on the rear.
it would be inside the deck, inside your porch area, not inside the, yeah, within the deck area. And I'm just asking right now.
You could put
I
it,
know that would take up
Back of the
a
deck.
significant portion of your square footage.
It looks like that's already done it. No,
it's on
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's attached on the
Currently,
outside.
right now, the steps are about 5.2 feet based on the site plan. I believe what the chair is addressing is if we eliminate the existing stairs, and I'm going to draw on this, so bear with me.
Flip them on the other side of this.
And we just kind of put them inside.
Yeah,
or on the back of it.
We could go right here, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
something like that, little stairs go up.
that,
That most likely would result
Put a landing halfway down.
and less intrusive on the side setback, but I'm not familiar with the overhang on the property, but I can tell you, my house has the exact same thing. I just get wet if I have to go up to the second floor on the
but
outside
that
stairs.
would eliminate 3.5 feet
Yes, sir, that would take
of the
you,
request.
based on the drawings I were provided, and keep in mind, they're rudimentary to begin with, that would give you about 8.2 feet based on what's provided here.
Instead of 10. I mean, yeah.
Instead of
10 was-
5.2.
Well, but 10's what's required. So
Right.
we would be having that, we're taking a foot and 10 inches away then, or
That's-
less than that, but.
That is definitely within the purview of the board to modify the request. If they are going to park a vehicle underneath, I believe, and once again, I'm not swaying the boards or anything, it would not be able to be used effectively for the parking of a vehicle. Most likely, the stringers would come down and put it. But Mr. King's suggestion at the rear could be, I mean, they could move it out anywhere they want on the deck.
They could go halfway down and turn them back.
And they could, that would definitely be up to their designer and the contractor and the homeowners to come to an accord on that.
There and turn?
So he's got 13 feet in there now, and if he took that stairway and put it in there, he would reduce it by 3, 4 feet, whatever that is.
It would take 3 feet off if we moved the stairs either inside the deck area or to the rear of the proposed second floor deck porch.
Any further comment, anything from the board?
And I would like to remind the board before you make your decision that the variance is just for a side setback. It's not a variance to increase lot coverage or ISR. My department will expect, at the result of this, that they comply with all other provisions of the code.
And it still has to comply with DEP, and it would have to go through
Yes.
a number of other layers other than this anyway.
Yes, sir. DEP will not look at zoning at all. Zoning is a local generated law, which is why they need the letter from my department. They will issue the permit if they see fit. At that point, the designer will have to design it in compliance with that.
We don't know what's going on right now.
All of a sudden, the whole design of our home
All
is
of a sudden, you
different.
guys are talking millions of dollars that we're gonna have to fix our house.
All we're talking about is 3 feet, or 5 feet, or 10 feet, or,
What is he talking about? That we have to be in compliance with DEP and redo the whole house, and pilings and all this? What-
Sir, do you want her
all
to
I can tell
approach
you-
the microphone so we can get in the record?
if you can come up to the microphone, please, and address your comments to the board.
I'm just understanding that,
Please come all the way up and then start.
I'm just understanding that he's saying that he's gonna expect us to, the whole house is gonna have to get inspected, and we're gonna have new pilings and have the whole house redone.
Okay,
Is
and right
that
now,
what-
I can tell you, we can't address any of that, the board can't. Our job is to look at the variance that you've requested to go from a 10-foot minimum setback, you're asking to go to a 5-foot minimum setback, and that's what we're looking at right now.
Then
We
why
are
is he talking
discussing-
about?
We are discussing loosely some of the other criteria that you may have to fit in, but that's actually
That's not what
between
they're
you
talking about here.
and when you try to get your permits. This board doesn't issue permits. When you go to get your building permits, you're gonna have to meet all the requirements, and I can't begin to tell you what the requirements are and how many different places you'll have to go. I don't know. Your contractor hopefully can help you. The building department here, I think, is an outstanding resource.
Okay.
They can help you. But what we're looking at tonight is whether or not we want to entertain a variance to reduce the minimum setback from 10 feet down to 5 feet. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're having a discussion. Some of these other things matter, but not really to the discussion tonight.
That's
and to
not
our
tonight's
vote.
discussion.
I know, but they're being brought up. And so
that's
as
just for us to deal
owners, we're confused about what Brian is talking about, we're,
But by the time you get your permits, you won't be confused. Everything will have been explained to you because you'll have to go and obtain those permits, or your contractor will. Somebody's going to have to get those permits in order to build what you want to build.
well, of course.
Yeah, that'll be a different
Of
thing that we have to do.
It's not us.
He was just pointing that out.
Okay.
So while we're pointing stuff out, I want to say too, that setback was just changed, what, a year ago? 1 or 2 years ago?
I believe, Chair, may I?
So we
I believe-
just missed it?
Hold on.
Go ahead, Brian.
In October of 2018, a 3-month moratorium ended, changing the side yard setbacks from 7.5 foot to 10. That was a restoration of the previous setbacks, and they were changed in what year, Ms. Boney, ballpark?
1991,
I mean, when was the setbacks changed to 7.5 feet?
2013.
In 2013, City Commission saw fit to reduce the setbacks. In 2018, my department was asked to restore them to 25 foot front and rear and 10.
Why wouldn't that be applicable to new lots, new construction? We've been there for some time. We missed our opportunity in the past to do our expansion. We weren't able to at the time. When it was a 5-foot setback. And so right under our noses, a year or so ago, and then we missed the boat. That's very frustrating,
That's something
Brian.
that comes from the commission, and really, it's no different than if you're driving down the road down here and the speed limit changes tomorrow, you're going to be held to the new standard. And what we're talking about is an ability to go around that standard for a unique and special case. And that's
Okay.
what we're talking about tonight.
All right, okay.
And
Thank
what
you.
we're talking about with the stairs is we're trying to lessen that
Yeah,
setback
I know, I
so that we can
understand.
possibly give it to you. That's-
Right, no, I know, and it's not our first choice. We've looked at that too. Thank you.
Any other comment from the board? Okay, we do have a motion on the floor to grant the variance as requested.
Should we amend that? Or do we want to talk about the
If
stairs?
somebody, we have a motion and a second. If somebody would like to make an amendment, we can certainly go through that process.
I would like to amend it to removing the side stairs and either put them to the front or the rear or something, so that it, at least then, it will be within like the 7.5 foot, where it was originally intended, instead of the 5 foot.
And allow the deck to come out 7 feet, or 10 feet from the building, leaving a rough setback of 8.2 feet is what we decided?
Based on what was just proposed, the minimum setback to achieve what they're proposing to build would be 8 foot, 2 inches. But I would remind the board that currently, if this site plan is correct, they're 19.2 feet from the front. So I may ask that the board consider having the stairs at the rear of the deck and not in the
Okay.
front. But that's up to the board to discuss.
Okay.
Can we go back to the 9 foot and 10 inch? If we're going to embed those stairs somewhere in that space, I'm hearing someone say 8 foot or something or another. The request is for 9 feet and 10 inches.
Well,
I
we're talking about
understand
the-
there's the additional 3 feet for the stairs, and that's causing an issue.
Okay, the setback that you've asked for is 5 feet. By removing the stairs, we move that 5 feet to 8 feet 2
Oh, I
inches
see what
is
you're
the
saying.
setback.
Okay, I thought you
So
were
that's-
talking about my...
No, that's where we are.
Sir.
And that goes back to what you were saying to the 7.5, where it's there.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor.
Who
We have
seconded it?
we have a second to the amendment.
Did you second it?
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the variance that, as amended, would be to remove the stairs from the east side, having the stairs either positioned inside the deck or off the rear of the deck.
As a suggestion for the amendment,
West side.
it might be easier just to set the distance off that you're okay with and not talk about stairs and,
Okay,
I like that even better.
okay. So let's state that for the record.
or 7.5.
Let's go ahead and state the motion
The
now.
old one.
Dennis, you want to state your amendment again?
The motion is amended.
You want me to
How
take-
much we're going to have as a setback then?
Yeah, let him.
Mr. Law.
Let's keep in mind, I'm just parroting what I just heard. This motion is not of my own.
We're giving it an 8 foot setback?
My recommendation, based on what I've heard from the discussion, is a motion to approve a setback reduction from 10 feet to 7.5 feet on the west side of the property.
I make that motion.
Well, that'll have to be the motion as
Amendment,
amended
okay,
unless we want to vote down the first motion. So that's the motion as amended is that to approve the variance for a reduced setback to 7.5 feet on the west side of the property, right? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second on the amendment.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hey, motion carries.
You're welcome. Good luck.
It's just a staircase.
And the cost. No, this one I expect to be graduated too. Yeah. You want me to, no.
Anybody need a break?
Okay,
Okay. All right, next item is variance 2020-13 7th Street. I am presenting this case given its complexity and its unique situation. About May of 2018, the setbacks hadn't been changed yet. The applicant and his contractor have had several meetings with the building department regarding construction seaward of the coastal construction control line. So as I just briefed the board, it requires a zoning verification letter. There was some issues, but at that time, we felt we had a legal submittal to continue with his review. In December, they demonstrated compliance with the ISR, I think, and I don't recall exactly, it was over 2 years ago. But city staff did approve their site plan based on the code at the time. Since then, they recently got their DEP permit, I believe, he's got a timeline. I believe in May, the swimming pool was issued in May, and somewhere along the line, they got their permit for the house. Unfortunately, at this time, we never heard anything back from the applicant. So when a complete submittal was submitted to my department about 2 months ago with payment for plan review, we could not get it out of zoning because we don't have a mechanism to extend. It's always the understanding that things expire 180 days. Well, as we researched this more and more, we discovered that as this city does not have a design review, a developmental review manual yet, this is where all this would be picked up at. It's just not there. The building code is very clear, 180 days, or else permits are expired, applications are abandoned, and such. Well, this is a zoning issue, not a building issue at this point. So we reached out to the city attorney, as once again, my staff is unable to accommodate this request because we don't have the legal authority. The city attorney advised us the variance process is where we need to go to get it in front of the board to consider the hardship. The applicant has provided quite the timeline which shows the history that they've been working on this. And you can see all the way back into March, so it was my third month. We were meeting, and I believe we were meeting every couple of weeks. At that time, there was a code in the overlay districts. And if you recall, a little bit after March, we came through here for the Boyle residence. It had to come to the board because the code was written a certain way. Once this was brought to the commission, it was determined that if you complied with the code, you don't need to go in front of the overlay district. It was added on both overlays on the last paragraph. So it never came to this board. It just didn't need to. It complied with the city's codes at the time. So here we sit, and this is a tricky question because of the definition of builders' vested rights. They had an approval from the city in 2018. Based on their timeline, they were actively searching for a DEP permit. So I've asked the city attorney to brief the board before any discussion on the concept of builders' vested rights. Some people in here are familiar with it. There is a staggering cost to a contractor and a homeowner to develop a piece of property just to get the plans out of the ground for seaward of the coastal line. So that is the dilemma we sit in. So before the attorney briefs, do you have any specific questions for me?
Was there, we identified some times that were inactive. Do we have any idea what the, what those time periods were, or were they continually searching or continually working for the DEP permit?
This is their timeline. This is, once we were done and we issued the letter, that's the last communication we've had. Oh, sorry. Wrong way. So it is included in your packets, but it is a pretty extensive timeline. So the question here, and the attorney is going to lend great assistance, is builders' vested rights, and is the intent based on the documents submitted in the spirit of the code. And just so the board is aware, when this came up, we have changed our applications to put a statement that clearance sheets will expire 6 months unless a building permit's been issued.
Okay.
Just to give you the dime cent version, vested rights are when a person buys their property, they have a certain understanding of what regulations govern it at the time of purchase. If after the time of purchase something is changed, they have vested rights in the change, and they can sue for the loss, which is a taking from their property rights for that change, if we enforce it. I don't feel comfortable going through all the merits that they might have on their side and the merits that we have on our side, but I will say that it is a significant risk for the city to not grant this variance. There'll be significant litigation costs and everything else, and I would remind the board that before they purchased the property, they would have been able to build according to what they're requesting right now.
Without coming to this board?
Without coming to this board. So,
and just to reiterate, this would have been subjected to the overlay districts, but after the Boyle residence was brought to this board, it came up to the commission, and the commission ordered the change to the code. And the last statement of both overlay districts say, if the proposed construction complies with all other provisions of the code, a review nor approval is required by the Comprehensive Planning and Zoning Board, something to that effect.
So as a board, you do not have to grant this, but at this point, it would be a issue for the city if you did, and it could potentially cause litigation down the road.
If we didn't.
If you did not grant it, correct.
Any questions for Mr. Law or the attorney? Not yet, board. Any comments on the? Okay, we'll go to public comment.
Wish the homeowner to comment?
Yeah, if you can come up to the, I'm sorry, the lady in the back, you had your hand up first, sorry. Who's the applicant?
I'm the applicant.
Okay, we'll have you first, I'm sorry. If you can wait just a minute, please, then we'll have public comment.
I've got a copy of that if they want to.
Okay, if you need anything, just let me know.
Yeah. Hey, my name is Don Paul. I'm referencing the property at 76th Street. I'm currently residing temporarily at 225 Atlantis Avenue in St. Augustine here. So I just want to, Brian gave a pretty good explanation. I just want to give a kind of a little more detail, and if you want to ask me any questions, I can answer those for you. So as I mentioned, I'm requesting a variance from City Commission Ordinance number 1808, which changed the setbacks to 25 feet front and rear and 10 feet on either side. The setback requirements at the time I did my design and got my letter from the St. Augustine, my code, it was 20 feet front and rear and 7.5 feet side to side, as you're probably aware. So as you're aware, I mean, I kind of went through this here. We got the codes, what they were originally. We got a letter of compliance, as Brian mentioned, on the 14th of December, 2018. And it was based on the codes in effect at that time, 20-foot front and rear, 7.5 on the side. Yeah. Okay, I provide just give you a little bit of context for some people. The lot is on 76th Street. The lot is right here where my pin is. You can see we're the only undeveloped lot on the eastern portion of 6th Street currently. The house across the street, I believe it's 6th Street, was just probably finished in the last couple of months, just later this year was finished up. And Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the same setbacks as I'm requesting, 20 feet front and rear?
Without the paperwork in front of me, I do feel inclined that that building was permitted prior to the moratorium ending. It was a 3-month moratorium issued by the commission at the request of some designers because they have severe investment. But for the record, there was a rash of permit submittals before the moratorium, because once the permits are complete submittal, they're subjected to the law at the time.
And just for your reference, I know there's been a lot of discussions about the coastal control line in reference to the other property. The coastal control line runs right along the western perimeter of my lot. So my lot sits just, a foot or so east of the coastal control line. So everyone fully appreciates all the extra work and costs involved in, permitting and designing to the coastal control line requirements. And as Brian gave I want to go through all the details, but we purchased the lot on the 14th of May, 2015. We did some initial phase. I did my architectural, my structural design, and then we had those reviewed with the building department. Then when Brian came into the building department, maybe I don't know if things changed or maybe his interpretation changed in regards with my architect. Maybe something, maybe my architect might have misunderstood the requirements. So after Brian came in, we had some additional meetings and we updated the architectural drawings at that point to meet the requirements of the city. So we did all that, and we got our letter issued in December of 2018, and then I continued on the time frame to do all the design requirements for the CCL, or the FDEP permit from them. As you know, there's quite a bit. I had a little bit of a delay. I was trying to get needed a total lighting architectural plan. My architect kind of went AWOL on me, so I had lost a little bit of time getting the electronic drawings from my architect so I could submit them to, get a new architect to carry on the work. So I found a new architect, I got my turtle lighting drawings done. I got Gulfstream to do all the cut and fill work. And then I pretty much did everything for my FTP. Got both those permits submitted. Had a request for additional information for the pool permit. So I had to go back to Gulfstream and revise a couple of cut and fill tables. I did that, that takes a bit more time. So as Brian mentioned, we got all the FDP permits submitted. And the last one was approved on the 18th of May of this year. So at that point, when we had the FDE permits in, I've got my builder, Brandon Construction. He was working with the city. I think you have a new electronic format, maybe now for building permits or whatever, but they were working through all that, and then the issue came up with the non-compliance with the zoning requirements. So that's kind of takes us to the present point.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Okay, if we can have public comment now, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, Karen Leslie, 13A 6th Street. And basically, I'm going to say no to the reduction setback, no to the fill, and no more flooding of the surrounding areas. That lot at 7 and 11, if you kept that map on, were owned by the same person. That house 11 was an army barracks that they put there, so it's offset on the angles. Anyway, he sold the yellow house. 11 wanted to build on 7. He was told no, he'd have to put it on stilts and all these things, and so he sold it. He got upset. I've seen that lot go up and down with everything for a while. I'm really shocked with all the 3-story houses that have gone up around my house, and they just fill it in and it floods, fill it in and flood, fill it in and flood, and tell me that it's going to all go to the road. If I spilt a glass of water here, it's not going to go to the road, it's going to stay right here, and when it rains, it stays right there, and it pulls at the yellow house, which is right next to him. It's flooded more. It's getting, the house behind me, when Zach filled it in, it flooded and came down. I put up a bulkhead around my house and 2 loads of dirt that I personally shoveled with Donnie. I don't appreciate having to fill in my lot because you just allow people to fill in as high as they want to go. Because that's what you can do. There's no limit on how high you go. The house next to me, we put a sump pump in, and 1 and 7 have sump pumps in their property to drain it. Water's going to fall, it's all level. If I pour a glass of water, it's not going to be 3 inches here and 0 inches here. It goes level. Okay? The homes have a sump pump, and everything comes down the road and pulls in the alleyway. And it is a road, it's the electric alleyway. And it's been brought up every time they're building something. When they built the McMansion next to Obie, we had a problem with that then. It all went, they put in the storm drains. The storm drains were not engineered, so they hold water. It's probably lower on 6 and higher by cone heads, so it all comes out that way. I've seen it come out the storm drains and flood the area. It floods behind Obie's. Obie's was, they took the dirt out of there to build the road. The lots next to me held water. They filled it in with houses. He filled it in when he cut the trees. So I had to bulkhead my property because I was losing my sides. I was hurting my legs, walking like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Just, the storm drains aren't working. There's been no engineering. That whole area's been hodgepodged. And this is the problem in this area that this city, this planning board, and all the maintenance has done for the 30 years that I've lived here. 30 years. And the Paul's house was the Planning and Zoning Board. They knew the house flooded. They said it looks like an island when we go to collect our rent from the rentals. So this isn't something new. This has been going on for a very long time. I'm very upset with this, and it's all legal to fill in, but everybody says, you can fill. But the other part of all these things that no one says, not to flood out your neighbors. And if you can't finish your paragraph and get that last sentence, then I don't know what anybody's doing here.
Thank you.
Can you show me if your property sits on this?
We're going to address comments to the board. You guys can take that outside if you'd like. Next speaker, please.
Why won't this go?
Hi, my name is Kathy Macho. I live on 5-7 Lane, but the back of my house is 4-6 Street. It's a little rental unit, and I am opposed to the variance. I'm opposed to the fill being put in, and it has created a lot of flooding problems. And I know she had spoken about the roads with the holes in the roads, and the roads are just atrocious back there. I cannot get to my house either way without going like 2 miles an hour, going up and down over this. And it's all because of the construction that has been going on. So I am just opposed to it, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take just a second. I did receive an email, and I'd like to, I don't think it came to everybody or to the city, but I'd like to read it into the record here to make sure it at least gets recorded into the proceedings here. And it's from Mr. Vincent, who owns the property at 15 6th Street. And it's, good evening, my name is James Vincent, and we are finishing our build at 15 6th Street and strongly oppose the variance applied for the above address. We live in Illinois and cannot attend the meeting November 17th. The current setback requirements in place makes the city uniform and equal for all. Please do not approve it, as it will obstruct ours and others' view of the ocean front. Thank you for your consideration. James Vincent. I just want to make sure that's in the record. Okay, any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Considine. My house is at 8 6th Street, which is directly across the street from the applicant's property. And let's see if I can get this to work a little bit. This is actually an exhibit that was used in the application for the new house that the applicant just referred to that's directly next to mine. That would be in that shaded lot area. Let me get my glasses on here. And if I'm not mistaken, this lot right here is the applicant's lot. And this is Kathy Machoch, who just spoke to the board. This is my house here, and that's the new one that just went up that we were referring to. This is the applicant, and this is Ms. Leslie, who just spoke. This is the little yellow cottage that we've been talking about that's immediately adjacent to. And to answer your question, sir, Ms. Leslie's lot is number 13 there, and yours is empty.
If you could address your comments to the board, please.
Sure. I was just answering his question for clarification. There's a new house here, a 35-footer that was extensively filled. There's a new house here, a 35-footer that was extensively filled, a house here, and these are all new here. Most all have been built by the same builder, and he likes to add a lot of fill when he builds a lot. We desperately need your help. That's why we're here. We understand the overlay district. We understand that there's an entitlement to the reduced setbacks. But I also think the board does have some power, or at least I would hope you guys have some power, to impose certain conditions to stop this flooding situation on 6th and 5th, which has become really bad. I mean, the street is flooded almost all the time after heavy downpours. And it's directly related to the lot filling. This is a picture here. And the woman that owns this lot, this house right here, she lives in California. Her daughter lives in St. Augustine, and she comes to visit her from time to time. And this is a picture of her backyard after not a hurricane, not a tropical storm, just a typical rain. And her entire yard is flooded. This is a picture of her fire pit, which looks like a koi pond. All that holding water from all the fill from the houses behind it. And when the house that was built next to mine was submitted for permittal, and I think Mr. Law might recognize this email because it's addressed to him. It actually says, and it's hard to read that first line, and I apologize, I can try to.
Need you to finish up your comments if you could, please.
Okay.
Everybody's given 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, my wife has given me her speaking time, and I don't have a submittal from the lady in California. but-
You're not allowed under city rules to give
You
another
cannot
person their
yield
speaking
time
time.
according to the attorney.
Okay.
But if you'd like to finish up, we'd like to hear what you have to say. I'm just,
You know, there's already an ongoing lawsuit right now, all right? You guys have no idea what it's like to have to face your neighbors. You've got all the neighbors pitted against each other now. And I'm a lawyer, I might as well tell the board that right now, and with the Upchurch Law Firm, we're suing these people because we don't have a choice. My house sits on a slab, I've got water running in my doorways, okay? This is a $450,000 house, I've got water running in my doorways. I cannot elevate my site. There's nothing I can do. I can't even sell the house, because a realtor looked at it and said, well, who's going to buy this place when you got water running in your doors, okay? The building department has been no help. And I could show you pictures of the fill that they brought in and cubed the entire lot. It was 20-plus inches high, completely unnecessary, and done with all these different houses in the neighborhood, okay? So whether the board takes action or not, that's up to you guys. You can approve this with the condition that there's no fill. You can approve this with the condition that the driveway be level. You can approve this with, to hold them to the 50% imperviousness ratio, because the front corner of my lot is literally washing away. My septic system is going to be exposed who knows when, probably pretty shortly. So we are desperate. We are up against the wall here. This is not an act. We've spent tens of thousands of dollars already in court. We're going to ask the court to impose certain conditions and setback requirements. There's part of the lawsuit seeks injunctive relief. And the house that was built next to me never came before this board. And from what we can tell, they were required to. And I really wish they had, because you didn't have to be a genius to figure out what was going to happen when they did this. You know, that when you go ahead and you fill your lot that much, all the other lots adjacent to it have to absorb the water, because there's just nowhere for the water to go. So to sum it up, I appreciate you guys giving me some extra time, but no fill be added to the lot. They're east of the coastal construction control line. They're going to have to elevate their foundation, whatever that 12 inches or what have you, hold them to the 50%, and have the driveway be level.
thank you for your comments. Okay, any questions
Mr.
or
Chair?
comments?
Sir, I hate to ask you this, but everything you put on that overhead, I have to have for the records,
Yes,
if you don't mind. If you need a photocopy, we're more than happy to go do that for you.
yes, actually, I made copies for you, and I'd appreciate it
well,
if
thank
you
you.
would put them in the record.
Yes, sir.
Are you
Either one of us. Yes, sir, thank you. Okay.
Okay, and let me remind the board quickly, we're not, our function here tonight is to look at the variance as it's presented to us. We we're not here to stop somebody from building. I don't know if that's the intent. For some people, we can't stop people from using their property, from using what we're here tonight to look at is the size of the building that's requested. The fill, whether it meets whatever guidelines that goes through the building department, I don't know that it's responsible for us to dictate how it's built, none of us being engineers or having seen any plans. I would imagine that the building department is going to be looking at every plan that's submitted with all of these considerations in mind. Is that correct?
If I may, sir.
Yes.
All drainage in the city goes through the Public Works Director, as he's a city engineer. The email that was put up was actually an email to the former Public Works Director, but I did serve as a liaison to make sure everything was kept in our records. As far as a lawsuit, I have no intent to speak on anything of that magnitude. I do agree that they be limited to 50% ISR, that they be limited to the city's building height. Now, see where the coastal construction line does have some interesting requirements. The sand that's excavated for the pool, if they continue with the pool, cannot leave the property. Sand can never leave its home, see where the coastal line, that's under a DEP rule. That's outside of my jurisdiction. And as far as the comments about driveways being level, I do always recommend a 6-inch slope to the road. And building height in this case, as some of these other houses, we have had them lowered during the design phase because they did not follow the city's building height. We will look at the building height as 1 foot above the center of the road or 1 foot above natural highest grade. And that's where the 35-foot will start.
And nobody's asked us to look at the ISR or to look at any of that. So it's assumed that all of that will meet the current building requirements.
Yes, sir. They're only asking for a variance. Yes, sir. With the setbacks, all other laws are in place. And I can reassure that all drainage does go to the Public Works Director. They perform stormwater inspections, and then they also do the final grading. And we do encourage the contractors to have that done prior to installing any sort of landscaping.
Any questions for Mr. Law? Any questions for any of the speakers or the applicant?
Brian, where does the 1 foot above the road come from?
The definition of building height is measured as 1 foot above the crown of the road or 1 foot above the natural highest front grade. The reason for that is so they can have positive drainage. Some jurisdictions have 2 feet of fill. The city does not get that option. The city is limited, so fill is normally what it is. Part of the problems on those streets is I have spoken with a resident, I believe she was one from California, with the koi pond in the back. If this is the property I'm thinking about, there's 4 lots that drain to that back corner of existing homes. So yes, I have seen that 30, 40-year-old homes, the back of the yard's lower than the front. So where we're developing more towards the eastern or the western side towards the boulevard where the big pond is, because the ground low, the request of the Public Works Director, former and current, is to slope the properties to a type A drainage. That's the back to the front. Now, if the board would like to impose a gutter rule, which is something I do ask the Public Works Director to look at, especially on 3-story houses with 50-foot wide lots, that's definitely within the purview of this board. But the gutter would just get the water to the front of the house, and if there's an underlying condition with 6th Street and Atlantic Alley drainage, that is definitely something Public Works is aware of. The whole road, I think, needs to be repaved, and at that point next year, this is all coming to pass. The City Commission is very committed to this. But it just takes time for us to get the resources, the development to fix those roads and do the proper drainage.
Any questions for Mr. Law? Yes.
What about retaining walls?
Yes, sir. Currently, there is a proposed retaining wall on one of the sides. That is something I've discussed in great detail with the Public Works Director, that as the city continues its infill lots, especially as a development like this community is spaced out over 60, 70, 80 years, you will run into certain issues where retaining walls are most likely the only avenue left. We have to build the buildings, the sand cannot leave the property, so we have to do something. So if we do a retaining wall, then we can properly slope the properties into most likely a type A drainage. The Public Works Director has required some retaining walls, but I definitely would leave that up to the city engineer, and I don't think that's in this board's purview to require it. But on your plans, there is one side that does have a 2 to 3 course retaining wall, and I was trying to read the elevations. It looks like it's about a 0.6, 0.7 foot difference. So that would help slope the property and keep water from running on four sides. It would just run one side to the front.
Not to get too detailed here, but if he goes with the DEP requirements, the house slab will have to meet the elevation of the lowest horizontal member. I'm sure you're well aware of how that house elevation sets. I won't go into that. So the house elevation will be set by the DEP, by the structural engineer. So then he could drop his garage down, but that garage would become a structure that have to have some sort of different engineering, breakaway walls, because it now would be below that DEP requirement.
Yes, sir. This, if I may, just take a couple more minutes to go through this. This city is a little more unique because of our existing low. We're about 9 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet above sea level. Some of the houses I've done, and I'm sure Mr. Saris has been on many of them in the Ponte Vedra area, where the existing grade is 18, 19, 24 feet. So their garages don't have to be breakaway. In this city, there is no option. The DEP reference monument's about 17.4 feet NGVD. That's the bottom of the structural beam holding up the next two floors. There is no requirement for that garage to be 3 feet above the road. It's going to become a frangible slab, most likely a 5x5 grids, unless the engineer has designed it as a structural to resist hydrodynamic and static loading. We do not see that given the cost. It basically looks like a bridge. So the walls will blow out under 20 pounds of pressure or so. Then the concrete slab, it's unreinforced, no steel, no wire mesh. It will break apart in 5x5 as not to put damage on the surrounding buildings if it does become a flotation. So at that point, I still recommend that the garages be 6 inches above the crown of the road. Eventually, the city will fix their drainage, and like I said, they're committed to it. But we got to get the water out of the property. But several of the properties I pulled elevations from the county's LiDAR system show that these houses are draining to their own backyards. And the one corner with the pit, and I talked with the lady almost for 45 minutes. And I told her next time she's in town, I'll go out there with her. But these are existing properties that are draining backwards. So responsible development is to drain it to the street, let the city's sewer system and water systems pick it up, but not to shed water to the adjoining properties, and that's the use of the retaining walls that was discussed prior. Gutters, I feel strongly about gutters. I think they're effective to get the water to the front of the house. So that's kind of how it works with breakaway components. So the whole first floor will be non-habitable. It will be afforded a bathroom, small mechanical and small electric rooms under the allowable use definition in the building code.
And it is the building department is going to make sure during the permitting process and whatever that the drainage doesn't drain onto other people's.
The first thing we do once we have a legal submittal that we can put into play is we send the site plan with the proposed elevations, proposed grading to the city engineer. We do not issue a building permit without him approving it. He'll have comments, he'll work with the designers. I believe the applicant said they contacted Gulfstream Design Group. So at that point, the city engineer will be in contact with those designers if he has issues. And we do not release the permit until the Public Works Director has approved the drainage.
Okay, any comments from the board? Any questions for anybody? Any of the Yes, ma'am. Okay, come up to the mic, please.
Karen Leslie. Okay. Now, all these new houses that are very big, and then you're saying how much rain goes onto the people's property. If you take the dirt, and this is the rain going in, and you put a swimming pool here, and a swimming pool here, and a swimming pool here, that rainwater goes in the swimming pool, and that ground's not holding any of the rainwater. So why does everybody have to have a swimming pool for rentals that are empty half the time? And that's adding to the drain water. No one's let's put a swimming pool in. Well, now you're not holding your own rainwater from your gutters. And then that's what the problem is. And behind the yellow house, they put the swimming pool in, so they came up this high. This high. They put 3 feet retaining wall to hold the dirt. It's got a French drain, but it's still going in between the pavers, and the one behind it's all paved. east of it behind his house, so all that water comes down. The yellow house is sinking. Mine was sinking. His is sinking. Because you keep putting swimming pools in where there's where the rainwater would go. Please add that into the ground calculations. And if anything, if you put a curb up where they could go up a driveway, because the lots next to me that are all developed, that was holding water. And he said it, he did all the interview. He said it's all a joke what they did. But you're putting the swimming pools in and a big house, and there's only a little bit of property, and where's the rainwater go? You need to do some sort of berm, just like they're doing in Davis Shores, in front of the yellow house, in front of my house, because it comes up my driveway. My kitchen holds water.
I can interrupt. You're talking about rules. We don't make rules here. This is not what this board does.
Okay.
We look at the rules and we
So
enforce them
swimming
and
pools.
grant
Swimming pools
variances
have
around
water,
the
the
rules.
ground, because he said how much is
We have
permeable.
nothing to do with the swimming pools. If your property is allowed to build a swimming pool, you put a permit in, you build a swimming pool.
Okay, and the swimming pool adds to the road flooding.
So you should take that to the commission, and when they make the rules that this board interprets and enforces and chooses how to deal with on an individual, unique basis, then they can change the rules and tell us what to do. We don't make the rules. We don't decide.
Thank you very much. That was one of the most insightful wisdom comments I've heard in a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, may I just inform the board one thing? Pools are calculated in the impervious surface ratio in accordance with Chapter 2 of the definitions. That was a change I made in the beginning of 2018.
And they are not counted as pervious surface?
No, sir, if they were pervious, it would be a very bad pool.
Yes.
So we're going to go with the impervious. We do calculate the pool and the pool deck. As this is medium density, they are allowed 50% ISR by law.
Yes. Okay, any other questions? Any comments? We have a motion on the variance.
Personal interest in its own way.
That's, yeah.
You abstain, you said?
Yeah.
You can't do that unless he has a personal interest.
Oh.
He must vote.
Okay, we need a motion on the variance, one way or the other. Okay, having heard from the attorney, and I'm just going to give my feelings here. I understand the public sentiment against this, and I understand also it's largely due to to a very local issue and a very local problem, which, I mean, every problem comes down to local. I mean, if it's in your front yard, if it's in your backyard, that's the biggest problem you have. Understanding that, also understanding that this board would not have heard this. It wouldn't have come to this board at all 2 years ago. Had this happened in a timely manner and prior to the changes that the commission put in place, we never would have seen this, we never would have addressed this, it wouldn't have required a variance. I was looking pretty carefully when I went through it. I wanted to find out if there was a gap in time, if the applicant just simply stopped working on this project for 2 years and then came back and wanted to do it. I don't see that gap in the timeline. Also listening to our city attorney telling us that there is I don't want to overstate, considerable risk or a risk of...
I think a risk.
A risk of litigation to the city for denying this variance. I was listening very carefully for not for a reason to deny it, because I think that the reasons that the people have brought to us tonight are credible and real, and especially real to them when they're experiencing flooding. I do think that's an issue. I don't think we can stop somebody from building on their property. We can't stop building that's going on in our neighborhoods. We can't stop building that's going on our vacant lots. People buy those lots and have an expectation to use them. So what we're talking about here is not just building a house, because we don't, that's not what we're asking. That's not what this board's being asked to look at. We're talking about building a house outside of the normal setbacks or the the current setbacks and asking to go with the previous setbacks. So the house, instead of being in 10 feet and 25 feet, would be in 7.5 feet and 20 feet. So that's the question that's before the board tonight. So if I've summarized that okay, if anybody has any comments, or we can go from here with a motion. We've ended public comment, but if you have something short,
I just had a quick question.
please come up to the board, to the mic.
For clarification purposes, again, Tracy Considine, 8th 6th Street. I apologize for wasting the board's time. We were under the mistaken impression that you all had the power to impose certain conditions with the approval. We understood the setback was going to be granted. We knew that all along. None of these people here are arguing against the setback. We understand that. And I can tell you wholeheartedly, from the bottom of my heart, none of our houses had flooding issues before the filling began. Even the house that was built right next to me. And the only reason I held this up, and it wasn't anything, Mr. Law is doing a good job from what I can tell. This was only to show the board that they submitted something saying that we will be bringing in minimal fill, if any. So if it's up to the building department, we're just praying that the building department does something when they bring in 3 feet of fill. Otherwise, it'll be another case downtown along with the other ones that are being filed. That's all. And I apologize if I wasted.
I would say, first of all, you're not wasting our time tonight. Your testimony and your comments are valuable to us to understand both sides of an issue. And second of all, I would reiterate that all of us in here heavily depend on the building department and the expertise that they bring not only to these meetings, but to the city's building and operations every single day. So I think, and we rely on them significantly to make sure that what is approved in here is built to the standard that the city's looking for. So I think those are very important, at least considerations.
Mr. Chair, if may I? I can't actually make the motion at this point. You have to make the motion. I can clean it up for record keeping, or else I'd be swaying the board.
Somebody to make a motion.
The building department has no objection to have the planning and zoning board regulate the height of the garage as 6 inches above the crown of the road. If you see fit to impose that, this is totally your will. We have no opposition to that.
I would defer to the people who, Mr. Saris, you have a building history. I'm not an engineer. I don't know. I'm a little reluctant to impose, at least me, to impose restrictions on something that I don't understand. If that's a recommendation of the building department.
Can I speak to that, Brian?
I just don't have the information. I don't have all the topos, and we're not at that stage.
Look, we went through a lot of time and effort and money to design the thing for the codes. Basically, the code was at the time 1 foot above the crown of the road. And that's what the entire house is designed to. That's what the grading plan is based on. That's what the FDE permits are based on. So everything's based on that. If you would change my thing to only 6 inches above the crown of the road, I would have to redesign most of the house.
If I may?
Go ahead.
I don't believe that's the case. The reason I say that, and trust me, I do understand your concerns. I've been working with this since my second month here. The reason I say I don't disagree, or I don't agree with that statement is your garage floor is essentially a floating floor. But that 1 foot that you mentioned is actually your building height. That's not going to change. Your building height is still measured as 1 foot above the crown of the road or your highest front natural grade. So all they're saying is, and I don't expect that you're going to be bringing in a lot of fill under a frangible slab.
No.
It's called sacrificial sand.
No.
Eventually Mother Nature's going to come reclaim it. So in this case, I don't think it's not going to adjust your plans. If your finished floor elevation would have to drop an inch, keep in mind, it's just a garage floor. Your breakaway slabs. So it wouldn't affect your building height. Your building height is still in accordance with the city, Chapter 6, 1 foot above the crown of the road or 1 foot above the highest natural front grade.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't think your building height, nothing's changing. And I don't have the information to tell you exactly what your designers proposed. But I'm sure very few people will put in a lot of fill under a frangible slab.
No, you're exactly right. We put the minimum amount of fill we could, basically, because obviously we have to meet the FDE requirements on the elevation, but that's about, what's the horizontal members, about 17.5 feet or so. I don't have the exact number right here. So it's it's quite a, you can appreciate it's a bit of a juggling act at times because you're limited to 35 feet, but you have to get your lowest level of horizontal member at 17 and a half feet. So you're juggling from the top and the middle and the bottom. They're trying to get everything to fit together. I think we've done a very good job. I can appreciate everybody on the floating comments. I totally appreciate that. What I would say is the change in setback only makes them fairly minor, and, it does increase the square footage a little bit, but that slight increase in square footage, it's not going to determine whether my lot floods your lot or not. That's going to be, just an incremental factor. I can appreciate that. So I think, as Brian mentioned, everyone will look to the, roads department and see what their best issue is that they can, to alleviate some of the issues and everything. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Okay, back to the issue. No comments, no questions, anybody?
No motion.
Do we have a motion? We don't get to adjourn without a motion. You guys can sit here all night.
We still have one more thing?
I motion to grant the variance at 7/6 Street.
I'll second that motion.
As
Second.
requested?
Second the motion.
We have any discussion on the motion?
Can Mr. Sars answer your question?
What was
You
my
asked
question?
him about the 6, how you weren't comfortable with what Mr. Law was saying?
I'm just not comfortable with my base of education to say that
you're
that's
asking
required or
him, a
not
contractor,
required.
to-
Yeah.
What's your question again?
Well, I don't know if it actually makes a difference, but if Mr. Law was saying that we could require in the motion that he drop the garage floor 6 inches, and
That's not what, no, I hate to interrupt you, but that's not exactly what I was saying. The building department requires we have no official rule, but we do work very hard with the builders to get the garage floors 6 inches above the crown of the road. So if the roads do take water, it can't get out through the drainage system, it doesn't run back into the driveway, into the garage. That's why we asked for that 6 inches. And if I recall, I don't remember if we were using permeable pavers. I think at one point we were using ribbon stripping for a driveway, and that'll all be looked at plan review. That's not a concern of this board. But I do agree
that
with...
house itself is a foot above the crown of the road?
That's where the building height is measured from. So when we evaluate the buildings for total building height, no building's allowed to exceed 35 feet in height. But to promote a positive drainage, we give you a 1-foot buffer. So that 35 foot starts 1 foot above the crown of the road or the front natural grade. Because the reason why is, imagine if you had a building 3 feet lower than the road and you went 35 feet. Now you're 32 feet because you got to get up to or else you would have a pond. And there are several properties that drain backwards. And it's just a result of development that occurred a long, long time ago.
Okay.
But I do share your concern about trying to stay away from engineering specifications and a variance.
Yeah, it's not my...
Maybe you could put an emphasis, if whatever the board decides, the approving a variance with the minimal fill installed.
Well,
You can build a house on a stem wall conceivably, correct?
It would have to be frangible. This house will be supported by a deep pile foundation. Then the beam will be above. So everything below will, in theory, in the event of a real storm, that it's a design event, you will lose.
And raising of the surrounding grade.
Right. And as the owner is aware, and some of y'all are aware, DEP compatible sand is not a cheap, about $700 or $800 a truckload, last time I looked into it. The key is not to drain to the adjoining properties, to get it out to the city-owned streets, or we have started to develop on-site compensatory storage. So possible swales in the yard to act as a little pond. One of them's going on as we speak now, because we just can't get the water. The road's higher than the properties. So I definitely would leave all drainage concerns to the Public Works Director.
Would you, Mr. Einhauser, would you accept a friendly amendment to add in there some terminology about minimal fill, minimum necessary fill, and a gutter system to drain the water to the front of the property? Is that reasonable?
The building department will discuss the gutters with the Public Works Director, but I would leave that to him.
Yeah, I think so.
Because he may do some, he's an engineer and they do some Some fun stuff.
Okay.
I think that, along those lines, what we're looking at is the setback issue and then the drainage concerns. And I think that there's very legitimate concerns about drainage, but I think that, that with coordinated effort, that can be solved in relation to his specific home on that street and the concerns that the neighbor has. And I don't mean to slight their concerns about the drainage at all. Like you said, we're just here to approve or disapprove the 7.5-foot setback, but certainly, and sir, what was your name again?
Don Paul.
Mr. Paul would take into consideration the concern of his neighbors that he'll see every day. So I think that's been a good favorable impression made today, and so.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Were you including the minimal fill or just going to leave that up to the engineers?
Well, when you have that minimal fill consideration, he's dealing with a lot of math. He's dealing with DEP math. He's dealing with math with, the fall to the street. So to say that he can necessarily have 1 foot of fill, he's not necessarily in control of that. The DEP and their minimum elevation requirements, the elevation of that lot.
How much fill he has to have?
Yeah, now I think there's a certain expectation that he's not going to bring in 4 or 5 feet of fill, but to just sit here and say that he could have that specific amount is not something he's in exact control of. We follow guidelines based on that.
So we leave that out.
I think it would be prudent to probably.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve the variance as requested. And we have a motion and a second. Any more comment on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That would be a
Nay.
nay.
An extra aye. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on this, please.
Mr. King?
No.
Mr. Sayers?
I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Tisdale?
Yes.
Mr. Kincaid?
Yes.
Ms. Odo?
Yes.
Mr. Einhauser?
Yes.
Mr. Babbitt?
Okay, the motion carries 6-1. Thank you very much.
That was painful. That was painful. That was a token nay.
All right, next on the agenda is modifications of the city's land development regulation, section 4.01.06, recreation standards for facilities. If we recall, January of this year, we adopted a brand-new comprehensive plan as required by state protocol. Part of that was a modification of this section to bring it into compliance. So all we're doing is making the land development code match the comprehensive plan.
Are we reading it, we're voting to recommend it, or what's our function?
The city commission is asking for the planning and zoning board's recommendations to approve or deny.
So they'd like us to recommend whether or not we should bring it into compliance?
Yes, sir.
And they're going to listen to it.
Like last month.
Just for a little history, any change to the land development code does require the recommendations of the planning and zoning board. So if you recall, we go through this periodically with things.
Okay, do we have a motion? Any discussion? Any questions for Mr. Law? Any of that, actually? All right, no discussion. Do we have a motion?
Adopted as proposed.
We have a second.
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 Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Awesome. Okay, board comment. Want to start over here? John, you want to, any board comment?
No, I'll pass.
No.
I've made enough comments tonight.
You earned your money tonight, Victor.
I have no comment.
No. I'm glad the donut shop opened. It's a little expensive, but glad it opened.
Renovation to make donuts.
I know.
Hauser.
No comment.
Mr. King.
Pass.
Okay, we get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everybody.
It's at 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock.
Happy Thanksgiving.